Imagine half your business travelers can't make it to the meeting because of weather. That's both inconvenient for you and $17 billion evaporating from American business budgets alone. Talking of business troubles, Amazon's cloud servers going down for 15 hours doesn't just pause Netflix. It locks paying fans out of playoff baseball, grounds airline check-ins, and makes billion-dollar sports leagues revert to manual systems they thought they'd retired years ago. Coming up on Unbreakable Ventures, we examine how climate disruption is rewriting corporate travel policy and forcing a fundamental rethink of duty of care obligations. How a single configuration error at Amazon Web Services exposed the brittle dependencies holding together modern sports, entertainment, and commerce. And we'll cover 5 emerging threats that crossed our radar this fortnight, including another Microsoft outage that hit just days after AWS recovered. It's Monday the 3rd of November, and we're covering the world's global threats over the last fortnight. So grab a coffee and let's get into it. Our main story this week concerns $17 billion worth of weather-related disruptions. Let me give you a number that should make every CFO and travel manager sit up. 87% of American business travelers had a trip disrupted in the past 12 months, not delayed by an hour, not slightly inconvenienced, disrupted to the point where it cost real money, missed real opportunities, and forced real changes to how companies book travel. Weather is now the primary culprit of disruption for business travel. 50% of US business travelers faced weather-related disruptions this year. That's up from 30% just 12 months ago. A near doubling in a single year. These aren't acts of God we can shrug off anymore. This is the new baseline. TravelPerk's annual disruption survey, which interviewed 7,000 business travelers across the US, UK, Germany, Spain, and Austria, paints a picture that's both expensive and accelerating. The average US company is now spending an extra $1,500 per disrupted traveller. Unplanned accommodation, last-minute rebooking at 27% higher fares, ground transport chaos, overtime costs for employees working through weekends to catch up. Multiply that across every business traveller who got stranded, rerouted, or cancelled on, and you're looking at $17 billion annually in the United States alone. That's roughly 4% of America's entire corporate travel budget, just disappearing into the chaos of unstable weather patterns. But the financial hit is only part of this. 28% of business travelers said disruption led to a missed sales opportunity or business deal in the past year. For C-level executives, that number jumps to 40%. These aren't theoretical losses, these are contracts that didn't close, pitches that didn't happen, relationships that didn't form because someone couldn't physically show up. And it's getting worse. 44% of business trips now experience some form of disruption according to this report. Flight cancellations are up across the board. 42% of US professionals faced cancellations during work trips in 2025 compared to 25% in 2023. Delays over an hour hit 38% of travelers. Transport strikes affected the majority. Lost or delayed luggage became routine. The knock-on effects ripple through organizations in ways most companies haven't fully accounted for. 46% of US travelers missed or were late to meetings with customers. 31% missed family obligations. 85% reported that travel disruption impacted their work productivity. Over a third had to work extra hours to catch up on missed work. Companies are starting to adapt, but the responses reveal just how normalized disruption has become. 41% of business travelers now book flexible fares by default. 25% build buffer time into every trip, essentially padding schedules to account for the chaos they now expect. 49% obsessively check travel updates. 33% rely on apps just to stay informed about delays they know are coming. On the corporate side, 36% of employers have introduced stricter policies to control the fallout, requiring flexible tickets, mandating specific travel insurance, forcing employees to use only approved platforms where disruption can be managed centrally. But here's what's not being said enough. Despite all the technology we've deployed, when disruption actually hits, 58% of US travelers still want to speak to a human customer service agent. Not a chatbot, not self-service, a human being. Because when you're stranded in an airport with a client meeting in 6 hours and your entire quarter depends on it, automation doesn't cut it. The structural issues are clear. We've built global business around just-in-time travel, tight schedules, no slack, maximum efficiency. And weather volatility is systematically breaking that model. The TravelPerk data shows this isn't a US-only problem, it's global. UK travellers saw weather disruptions double from 21 to 42% year over year. European travellers face similar patterns. So, what's driving this? Climate instability is the obvious answer, but it's not the only one. Airlines are running leaner operations with less buffer capacity, airports are stretched, air traffic control systems are dealing with more severe weather events that ground entire regions. And critically, companies are back to heavy in-person travel after years of virtual meetings. Air travel spending is up 31%, which means more people exposed to more potential disruption at exactly the moment when disruption risk is rising. The duty of care implications are enormous. If nearly half of all business trips face disruption, and if weather is becoming the dominant factor, companies have a legal and moral obligation to rethink how they send employees into travel risk. That means scenario planning for stranded workers, real-time tracking, pre-arranged contingency accommodation, clear policies on when trips should be cancelled proactively rather than reactively. And let's be blunt, if you're not factoring climate disruption into your travel policy and budget planning, you're building on sand. This is not going to get better. Weather patterns are destabilizing. The data shows acceleration, not plateau. So what can you actually do about this? First, accept that flexible travel is no longer a perk. It's a necessity. Build flexibility into fares, schedules, and policies. The cost of flexible tickets is lower than the cost of emergency rebooking at 3 times the price. Second, invest in real travel risk intelligence, not just weather alerts. Real-time disruption monitoring that can trigger proactive rebooking before your traveller is stuck. Platforms exist that aggregate data from airlines, airports, and weather services to give you advance warning. Third, establish clear contingency protocols. If a key meeting depends on physical presence, send multiple people on different routes. Build in arrival buffer time. Pre-identify backup accommodation. Don't assume everything will work smoothly. Fourth, review your duty of care obligations with legal counsel. If employees are routinely stranded due to weather and you haven't taken reasonable steps to mitigate that risk, you may face liability. And fifth, recalibrate expectations. Not every meeting needs to be in person. Not every trip justifies the disruption risk. Use travel strategically, not habitually. The era of frictionless business travel is over. The new era requires resilience, flexibility, and honest accounting of what it actually costs to move people around a planet. Weather has stopped being predictable, so should you. Before we move on to our second threat update this week, let's look at 5 quick-fire emerging threats we've picked up throughout the last fortnight. These will be noteworthy stories we think you should know about, but less detailed than our 2 core threats analysed, and stories we'll continue to keep an eye on for development. Microsoft was hit with yet another widespread outage of its Azure cloud platform and related services on October 29th, just days after the Amazon Web Services incident we'll discuss shortly. Starting around noon Eastern Time, a configuration change affecting Azure Front Door and DNS routing took down Microsoft 365, the Azure Portal, Xbox Live and Minecraft, along with thousands of customer workloads. The disruption lasted approximately 5 hours and affected major organisations including Alaska Airlines, Vodafone UK and Starbucks, as well as government portals in New Zealand. Microsoft later attributed the incident to an inadvertent configuration change, forcing engineers to roll back to a last known good state while blocking all customer configuration changes. The timing was particularly notable as it occurred on the same day Microsoft reported strong quarterly earnings, with Azure revenue up 40% year over year. The incident highlights how even the largest cloud providers face operational risk from configuration errors, and how such failures ripple across industries given the concentration of global infrastructure on a handful of platforms. DoorDash has unveiled crisis response mechanisms to provide emergency food aid options in anticipation of a potential SNAP benefit shutdown that could affect millions of Americans. The food delivery platform announced partnerships with non-profits and introduced mechanisms including fee waivers, discounts and delivery support programs to help affected households access food during what could be a benefits interruption. DoorDash is coordinating emergency assistance through its platform while working with community organisations to reach those most at risk. The move reflects growing corporate involvement in social safety net contingencies, as political uncertainty around government benefit programs creates potential gaps in essential services for vulnerable populations. Baden-Bauer's Crisis to Takeoff product has reportedly reduced PR fallout costs for companies by an average of 22% through rapid response protocols, targeted messaging, and reputation management services. The Crisis Communications offering combines pre-built playbooks, rapid stakeholder engagement strategies, and measurement of reputational impact to help organizations navigate brand crises more efficiently. The firm cites the 22% average savings figure alongside other client outcome metrics, positioning the service as both a reputational safeguard and a cost control mechanism. The case study reflects growing interest in quantifying crisis management ROI as organizations seek to justify spending on preparedness and response capabilities. UK car and van production fell sharply in September, with the Society of Motor Manufacturers and traders linking the decline partly to production disruption, including a major cyber incident at a large manufacturer. The SMMT also warned that government plans to alter company car taxation through changes to employee car ownership schemes could damage the company car market, potentially reducing demand, impacting remuneration packages, and harming competitiveness and jobs in the sector. The statement combines short-term production disruption reporting with a broader fiscal policy warning, arguing that if ECOS reclassification or punitive tax measures proceed, the downstream effects on the automotive industry and corporate fleet management could be significant. Following Amazon Web Services' 15-hour global outage, cyber insurers and risk analysts classified the event as a moderate incident for the insurance market. CyberCube noted that business interruption exposures and incident response costs are the main insurance consequences, with experts recommending cloud provider diversification, review of policy waiting periods, commonly 8 to 24 hours, and consideration of parametric or extra expense coverage. The incident has been framed as another near miss for cyber insurance, reminding insurers and policyholders of systemic concentration risk. Analysts emphasize that conventional business interruption claims are often costly, slow, and burdensome to prove, whereas automated or parametric policies could provide faster, more usable recovery for organizations dependent on cloud infrastructure. Further sources and references can be found in the footnotes of this podcast. But without further ado, let's look at our second thread update this week. On Monday, October 20th, at roughly 3 a.m. Eastern Time, Amazon Web Services experienced what would become a 15-hour outage that exposed just how fragile the infrastructure of modern entertainment, commerce, and sport really is. AWS hosts about a third of the internet. That's not hyperbole. A third of all cloud-based infrastructure runs through Amazon's data centers. When a domain name service error hit AWS's Virginia region, the company's oldest and largest nerve center, the cascading failures were immediate and global. Ticketmaster went down. The Premier League's semi-automated offside technology stopped working mid-match. Sports betting platforms FanDuel, DraftKings, and Fanatics Sportsbook all crashed. Snapchat, Reddit, Fortnite, Roblox, Venmo, Coinbase, Ring doorbells, and even 8 Sleep's cooling mattresses all became inaccessible. And critically, this happened on one of the busiest nights in North American sports. The Toronto Blue Jays were hosting the Seattle Mariners in Game 7 of the American League Championship Series, a World Series berth on the line, the hottest ticket in Canada. And fans couldn't access their digital tickets. Ticketmaster's systems were down. The Blue Jays posted frantic messages on social media telling fans to wait, to hold off managing tickets, to expect extra staff at entry gates to handle issues manually. The timing was almost poetic in its irony. The Mariners' opponent, Seattle. Amazon's headquarters, Seattle. The cloud provider that broke ticketing for the biggest game in Canadian baseball in 32 years, Amazon. The Blue Jays weren't alone. The Detroit Lions and Seattle Seahawks were both hosting Monday Night Football. Both teams issued statements acknowledging that Ticketmaster, account managers, and mobile apps were all impacted. Tottenham Hotspur in the Premier League postponed ticket sales for multiple upcoming fixtures. Fans globally were locked out of the digital infrastructure that sports has come to depend on completely. But the sports disruption went deeper than ticketing. In England, the Premier League match between Brentford and West Ham kicked off without semi-automated offside technology. The system, which uses Genius Sports skeletal tracking and computer vision to digitally recreate the pitch in real time, requires cloud compute to function. When AWS went down, the technology that's supposed to eliminate human error in offside calls simply disappeared. The league had to revert to manual VAR with virtual offside lines, the old system that's been the source of endless controversy. And inevitably, right before halftime, an offside decision was needed. The correct call was made, but it took significantly longer than the automated system. For a sport that's been torn apart by debates over technology and fairness, watching the Premier League lose its most advanced tool mid-match because of a cloud failure was a stark reminder of how dependent the game has become on infrastructure it doesn't control. Sports betting was chaos. FanDuel and DraftKings, the two largest betting marketplaces in the US, suffered outages that left bettors unable to place wagers, check active bets, or access account balances during one of the year's heaviest betting nights. For an industry built on real-time action and instant settlement, hours of downtime during Monday Night Football and playoff baseball represented both massive financial loss and severe reputational damage. The root cause was technical but revealing. AWS identified the trigger as DNS resolution issues for its DynamoDB service endpoints. In simpler terms, the digital phone book that tells internet traffic where to go stopped working. Services couldn't find the databases they needed to access. Everything that relied on those connections failed. Amazon's engineers implemented fixes over several hours, but recovery was uneven. Some services came back quickly, others took much longer, and the lack of transparency about which specific services were affected at what times created confusion for businesses trying to communicate with customers and manage their own operations. The incident raised questions that sports organizations, broadcasters, and commercial platforms are still grappling with. What happens if AWS goes down during the Super Bowl or the World Cup final? Cloud-based IP services have replaced satellite as the primary method of transmitting live pictures from venues. Streaming services are as important as linear television. Social networks and companion apps are a crucial part of the second screen experience for fans. If AWS had gone down during a truly global event, the disruption wouldn't have been measured in frustrated fans. It would have been measured in billions of dollars of lost advertising, broadcasting failures, and complete operational collapse for leagues and venues that have built their entire infrastructure around cloud dependency. Genius Sports, AWS's partner for Premier League technology, is just one example of how tightly integrated cloud providers have become with live sports operations. The Bundesliga, Formula One, and the NFL all have major partnerships with AWS, using cloud infrastructure for everything from real-time analytics to fan engagement tools. When that infrastructure fails, there's no backup. The technology just stops. Ticketmaster's failure was particularly concerning because it wasn't even the first time. Just a year earlier, rival platform Ticketek suffered a multi-day outage that drew sharp criticism. The pattern is clear. Digital ticketing has created single points of failure that can lock thousands of paying customers out of events with no manual workaround. The fragility extends to operational technology inside venues. In-stadium Wi-Fi, digital signage, access control systems, mobile ordering for concessions, all of it depends on cloud connectivity. When that goes down, stadiums can't function as designed. They revert to manual processes that staff haven't been trained on and that venues don't have capacity to handle anymore. The financial impact is difficult to quantify precisely, but IT experts estimate that an outage of this scale could run into tens of billions in lost productivity, sales, and operational disruption globally. For sports specifically, even short outages translate to millions in lost ticket sales, merchandise revenue, and sponsorship fulfillment. But here's the deeper problem: vendor concentration. AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud collectively control about 65% of global cloud infrastructure. Most organizations don't have true multi-cloud redundancy. They're dependent on one provider, and when that provider fails, there's no failover. Systems just go dark. The AWS outage came just days before Microsoft experienced its own major failure, affecting Azure, Office 365, and Xbox services. Two of the three major cloud providers hit with significant disruptions within a week of each other. That's not bad luck. That's a structural vulnerability in how the internet is architected. So what should organizations, especially those in live events, sports, and entertainment, actually do about this? First, accept that single vendor cloud dependency is a critical risk that needs board level attention. If your organization can't function when AWS is down, you have a business continuity problem that needs mitigation. Second, implement true multi-cloud strategies where feasible. That doesn't mean duplicating everything across providers. That's expensive and complex. But critical systems should have failover capabilities across different cloud platforms or on-premise infrastructure. Third, maintain manual backup processes for mission-critical operations. Venues need to be able to admit fans, process transactions, and deliver core services even when digital systems fail. That means training staff, keeping equipment functional, and testing backup procedures regularly. Fourth, review your contracts with cloud providers and understand their SLAs, liability limits, and compensation structures. Most cloud agreements heavily favour the provider and offer minimal recourse for customers during outages. If your business depends on uptime, you need contractual protections or insurance that covers cloud provider failures. Fifth, invest in incident response planning specifically for cloud outages. Know who makes decisions when systems go down. Know how to communicate with customers. Know how to fail over to backup systems. And test those plans, because when AWS goes down at 3 a.m, you don't want to be figuring it out in real time. And finally, for sports organizations specifically, diversify your technology partnerships. Don't build your entire match day operation on a single cloud provider's infrastructure. The Premier League learned this lesson the hard way when offside technology failed during a live match. That's a relatively minor consequence. Next time, the failure could be total. Sport is only live once. Its best moments are priceless. And right now, too many of those moments depend on infrastructure that's more fragile than the industry wants to admit. That's it for today's update. If you need help navigating these threats or building a plan to protect your business, the same advisors who collate these insights are here to help. Head over to unbreakableventures.com to book a complimentary chat online with one of them. And if you found this resource useful, consider subscribing to Unbreakable Ventures or sharing the article with your network. After all, resilience is about community and communication. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, stay safe.
Unbreakable Ventures is brought to you by the Senior Advisory Team at Fixing, a boutique resilience advisory based in the Oceania, ASEAN and India regions. Special thanks to our sponsor and Europe's leading SaaS provider for resilience software, F24. Our resources are researched and published by industry specialists across New Zealand, Australia, Malaysia and the UK. This podcast provides advice and opinion on disaster recovery and the threat landscape. The content is not a substitute for expert guidance during a crisis. Unbreakable Ventures is trademarked by Fixing Consulting Partners, a Fixing Group company.